Now guys, we got a lot of stuff up for grabs here. We got broken sawzall blade that we cut the bell housing with. We got the stud that we took off for the heater box. Now, let me bring you in here. I know it's probably getting a little bit of whatever, like, oh God. Now, when we pull all these videos together, it might be different. I did, however, clean the box off. It still smells like mouse poo-poo. Now, I stuck that plate up there just to show you about how much room we're going to have. I'm going to turn this light on. I don't know if you can even see, but it is tight. Okay? It's tight. Look how tight that is. Now, it is in there in a funky way or whatever, but, you know, that is tight. And that puts us flush on our other mounting locations, too. Can we shim that out? Probably not with that air box. You know, you got to pull all that off there on the front to really see inside of that, but I just kind of, you know, cleaned it up a little bit. Nothing fancy. That light's hurting my eyes. Nothing fancy. Now, that motor, once it goes down in there, you know, it's probably going to shrink about a quarter, maybe even 3/8 of an inch once it goes down on the rubbers, once it goes down on that. So I've got some cutoff wheels. Hopefully they'll be here in a few days, and we can start on the motor mounts. Now, once I get that motor to where it can come on down, it can only come so much. You know, I got a block of wood in there. It's about 1 inch. Sorry about that. It's about 1 inch thick. So we got 1 inch thickness on. I know I don't have a tape measure once again, but I'll get you a measurement, tell you how thick we are. Now that motor did roll back over. I know you can't see that, but when it rolls over, look at that. Look at that oil pan. Look at that plug. You know, it'll roll over and touch. So if you grab it and you push it over, I can hold it over with my hands. Right there. That's about all the room you're gonna get, you know. So it can come down a little bit, but you gotta make sure that you've got room, because look at the motor. It's high in the front. Now you got to make sure you've got room for that motor to come down and whatever. I'm sorry, this camera is acting up. You know, look at the motor. It's sitting a little bit high. So if it was to come down about 1/2 inch or 3/8, you know, somewhere, guesstimation now. You know, you need that room for the bell housing. And honestly, on these fuel lines, we may take them and bend them over this way. I want to get them away from the exhaust, because when they come over here around this exhaust, if that takes a hit on this side or something, you know, hopefully it don't, but if it does, we need to be more cautious of how we put it together. You know, I try not to put stuff together like that. I know it would be a problem. You bring the fuel lines around the front right here or over the top, you know. You see where I'm at? Not saying that nothing could just honestly catch on fire. I'm just going to make sure that I did all I could do. But with that pan back there, you know, yeah, it's kind of in there funky. Let's be honest. It's funky looking. It's not in there just whatever. Now I might try to make it to where I could pop rivet it in, or maybe weld the top and then cut the bottom to where I had a place to where I could take the lid off of the bottom to tighten the bolts up. I'll put that other bolt in there, but let's be honest, it's just not wanting to tighten up all the way on that other hole. It feels like it's going there and hitting something solid. It could have something in there. I don't want to force it, but you can see with that heater box in there, there is no room. And this plate, this piece comes off, okay? I just got it sitting on there like so. The heater box, I got it sitting in there just like so. So let me set you down here, see if you can watch this happen. You take his heater box out. Ow. Take the heater box out. And here's the way the plate's sitting in there, funky. You know, the plate's sitting there kind of funky. So it's going to be back a little extra further than probably what it would be. But we do know that that will fit. Now, if we set it out here, excuse me. If I was to set it in there like that, will it fit? I don't know. I got that dent in it. We might have to flatten that out with a shrinking hammer or something. You know, just kind of straighten it up, take the roll out. Now, I do have that other bolt in there. It's hitting something solid. It looks like it's got room to go through, but 100% honest with you, it's tight. It's feeling tight. And it's aluminum. I'm not going to try to strip the bolt out. Now, the two bell housing dowel pins, they're not going to have nothing in them. They're kind of offset both sides. You know, that one, I don't know if you camera will pick it up. It don't have nothing that goes in it either. But we need to get our radiator hose on it and everything before we finalize getting this piece on right here, whatever it takes. Now, I know these videos, people are like, oh man, come on, just get it done. Let's hear it run. Let's do a burnout. Yeah, okay. We are taking you through the process of exactly what it would maybe take. Now, he did ask me how thick I wanted that plate. I was like, you know, whatever. If you do one, you don't want to cut it up, that probably needs to be 3-4 inches thick. That would bring the motor out far enough, maybe, that it wouldn't hit on the firewall. Do not quote me on that. Don't say my boy Skeet steered me wrong. Now, I'm just taking you through the process of what I'm going through. We're honestly going to pull this wiring harness completely out, and then we're going to try to use them holes. You know, them rubbers come off, they just tape on. We're going to stick our other wiring harness through there that came off of this motor and try to make it work, because we got a transmission controller for this transmission. Not a TCI, not an atomic, something, you know, 1,000, 2,000. I've even seen them as high as 4,000 bucks. Being honest. But and we'll have to put the manifold back on it. We got to put that air box that came off of it back on it. We may have to change out that brake booster to something smaller like Geo Metro, a van brake booster, anything like that. And then if that's the slave we don't got, or we could use the one off the car. I think it's bigger, but it's flatter, so it might suck up a little tighter or something. Not 100% sure, but this is the process that we're going through. Obviously, we got to get it down on the motor mounts next. Once we get it down on the motor mounts, okay, the pressure's off. You know, can we just tack up the firewall and pull the motor out? Can we get to those bolts with that piece welded in? I don't know. I definitely want to weld the top of it, so we'll have to pull the motor back out. And if we leave this bottom patch out, you know, to where we could get to the radiator hose clamp, all the bell housing bolts, what have you. Obviously, you got to pull the dash out, put the heater box back. That's not a big, huge deal. I mean, this dash ain't overly complicated. But I at least want to pull the motor out and weld it up solid from both sides in case the top of that motor does come back and hit. You know, we tried a little harder. You can't stop a train or a truck from smashing something flat. It don't matter what it is. Let's be honest. But, you know, I did all I can do, and I'm doing all I can do. We still got to clean that baby up a lot. It smells like mouse poo-poo. You really need to change out that heater core while you're there. And where that comes back so far, I started looking at it. You can't cut into that box because of that heater core right where it's at. With that being said, you know, hopefully once we can get this motor down, nothing's changed. I'm not hiding nothing. I showed my mistakes. It looks cobbled. I will show you it looks cobbled. We got a motor plate that we made in there. I do have some cutoff wheels coming. So once we get our cutoff wheels, we'll try to get this motor. Like I say, you got to get the motor in there this way, and then the transmission sets tight to the driver, or it's long on the driver's side, short on the passenger side. you need to get a measurement that you can live with on both sides. It sets to one side, okay? It sets to that side. If you follow in the videos, the transmission kind of sets to one side. It's basically to the passenger side. We get it where we want it, put us a tape measure in there, kind of get it close, like I say, and then get the motor to where we can live with it in a fire or this engine bay. I'm good with that. Can I lift the motor up or the transmission up? Probably. It don't bother me. It don't hurt my feelings having it look like that. Still got to get a belt and some other stuff. Well, I'm going to do something different than fuel lines. You know, I might try to bend them out to make them go down the other side of that, so it don't really matter on the firewall. But that's a game plan. I'm just kind of bringing you along for what I'm doing here. I'm no pro, get a second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th opinion. I'm a firm believer in that. Just don't take one person's word. Well, you know, I thought about it, but think about it, okay? That's what we say around here. Think about it. That was what I was able to get done as far as finding the other bolt. We put the heater box back in. We put our plate up there. We know we got the motor up high enough. We got to get the motor rolled up there. You know, it'll just be aesthetically pleasing, but mainly what we're doing is we'll get the transmission pan leveler. It ain't gonna be perfect. It might be whatever, but as long as it's like this way, like side to side and up, you know, and side to side, if that makes sense. 4 different ways, X marks the spot, if that makes sense. Now, once we get that to where we got motor mounts on it, you know, I may have to do something different with those fuel lines. If that's the case, we'll bend them down on this side of the motor to the driver's side. Make sure, you know, obviously got room for the intake. Obviously got room for that other heater box, because when you put all that stuff on there, that stuff's kind of tucked into the side. You know, maybe you can straighten it out to where it goes down the motor like that, comes back and hits fuel lines away from the intake. That's asking a lot. You know, we could even come back to the back side of that, but you know, we got to have room for that canister oil filter on there too. It's about making room and living with compromises. So, and like I say, that brake booster, it's just kind of big in there. Might have to change that. There is your canister. You know, the intake comes up there. This whole fuel rail, you know. You're good with that. It's just when you get right there, then it needs to come down. Maybe to the side and tap in on this fuel line and the other fuel line. The return and the whatever. Could a guy just unhook all that and straighten it up with a couple wrenches till you can just kind of put a 90 down on it and bring it back to the back of the intake and hook the fuel lines up here? Possibility. We got to have room for that canister. And it's got to have room for that throttle body, and it's got something that sits on top of the throttle body too. Process of elimination. We still got to fix this hose clamp. You know, it's cobbled or whatever. We got to make sure we can get our heater hoses on it. You know, they got a route in there somehow. Hopefully we can get the air out of it. Whatever. Got to find heater hoses. That's all whatever. We got to get a manual rack on it. We got to get a shorter belt. We got to work on the motor mounts next. We kind of got it cobbled in there so far. Change out the wiring harness of this truck to the car wiring harness. I don't know. The way that other one was, it kind of just went straight to the firewall. Now, what are we going to have to do to make sure we got room for plugs, an electric fan, and hopefully we don't have to cut no wires. May have to extend the wires to the electric fan, and then, you know, we still got to get some lines for the transmission lines. So, with the process of elimination, that's what we're doing. We're going to pick it apart one piece at a time. Like I say, try to do one thing at a time, one day at a time. You know, next thing's next. Okay, we got room. We know that the plate will almost fit with the heater box. Those fuel lines, can we get those bent down and around some other kind of way? Hopefully. I'm hoping. You know, I don't see it really being a huge problem. They might look beat to death, but they really need to come out from behind the motor. It's not a good spot. And it would give us room for our heater core lines. You know, if we can't get them hooked up, we can just run one to the other. But they have to be hooked up, let's be honest. And then, you know, once it's down on motor mounts, once again, down on the motor mounts, we make some motor mounts, we get everything buttoned up, we kind of get everything hooked up, whatever it takes, and we'll kind of see where we're at, and then it'll be the process of elimination, getting the headlights hooked up, taillights, all that. I just kind of touch base on most of the vid in case one just clicks on there, oh, get up to speed, we're here. You ain't got to completely start over, hopefully. But there's still a few things we got to work out. Making room is one. You know we can get the heater box in. We can get our plate back on there. You might just throw a couple little tack welds on it. And then you need to make sure that you can pull it out. Get it welded out solid. Spray paint it. Back in there with the bolts that are tight. And then once it's down on the motor mounts, that's where it's going to be. I'm sorry, that's just the way it's going to be. And then hopefully we can get it to where we can eventually hook everything up and get it started again. It's a game plan. One bite at a time. We're picking it apart. We're cleaning up and taking stuff apart, putting it back together. We got to pull that wiring harness completely back out of there, so maybe we can run that other wiring harness through it. Now, we may have to cut a different hole. You know, you put the steering column in there, whatever, that don't fit, we can actually come beside of that brake booster. I don't want to buy nothing extra if we don't have to, but there's really no room right there because once you put that intake back on it, you know, that's pretty tight. It's almost directly against it. We need to put it back on there once we roll that motor over and make sure it ain't going to hit that brake booster. I don't want to change none of that out because I know it'll work for the brakes. But you would have to take the intake out to change the oil filter canister. It's a lot, you know. But we got to start pulling that wiring harness out too and kind of figure out what's what, you know. And we'll have to go through a wiring schematic. It'll take some good time to figure that stuff out. If we can get it to start and run and pull with the transmission controller, that's good enough. And then I can figure out headlights and taillights. It won't take much after that. We've got to make sure we got an electric fan. It's a lot. That's a lot to say. To make it start, run, drive, headlights, taillights, brakes at work. You know, that's a lot. But follow along, guys. You know, like I say, that plate hitting ain't no big deal. I mean, we can eventually, you know, work on that till we can get it in there to where you got room, but we got to make sure we get it down on some motor mounts.